Let's talk about Mexican Independence Day. Was Mexican independence really for our Mexicans or just the Criollo elite? Although there were a handful of Mexicans of color, the majority of leadership positions of the Mexican Revolution were reserved for the elite, which were comprised of Criollos, which were Spaniards born in Mexico. September 16, 1810 is when the Catholic Criollo priest Miguel Hidalgo called for the independence from Spain in his famous Grito de Dolores. Although there are a handful of Mexicans of color, as you can see, the intention was to get free from Spain so that they no longer have to go through the leadership of that country overseas and that they can exploit and dominate the population themselves. So what happens as Mexico is becoming a nation is that they write their constitution in the Spanish language. Makes sense to us today, but did you know that at the time that this first Mexican constitution was written, that over 70% of the population were speaking an indigenous language? That made sense considering that the elite were comprised of criollos, Spaniards in Mexico. The indigenous and other populations of Mexico were not centered to the cause of independence into nationhood. Anthropologist Guillermo Bonfil Batalla, the decolonization of Mexico was incomplete. Independence from Spain was achieved, but the internal colonial structure was not eliminated. The groups that have held power since 1821 have never abandoned the civilizational project of the West and have never overcame the distorted view of the country that is essence of a colonizer's viewpoint. Thus, the diverse national visions used to organize Mexican society during different periods since independence have all been created within a Western framework. We cannot forget the power of the eugenist and white supremacist concept of mestizaje. According to Federico Navarrete, he considers mestizaje an ideology of power. He says that it was never done biologically, that it does not represent something that happened culturally, and that it wasn't just about the white man and indigenous women, it centralizes. He also says that non-indigenous and non-Spanish people have lived in Mexico as well. And mestizaje did not begin with the conquest of Mexico, but rather in the 19th century. Let's be very critical about how identities are formatted and created on the foundation of white supremacy. Read more. México racista, un nosotros sin Estado.